corporate profits are obviously holding up just fine.
This week is just how quickly forecasts have changed.
If you have an old kettle that takes ages to boil,
end up being those with the least power in the economy.
Look, we have to close the loopholes and stop.
So the government owes itself money.
Hey, what about short term? What about tomorrow?
Is it about wages? Is it about price caps? Where are you at? Welcome to The Table, a new discussion show from Byline TV, where we'll be having the conversations that matter with people we might not always agree with. But this isn't just any talk show. At The Table, there's no hiding behind sound bites or slogans. We're going straight to the heart of the issues and exploring the philosophical and cultural underpinnings behind our positions. So joining me at the table tonight are Sam Bright, Chief of Investigations at Byline Times, Grace Blakeley, commentator and author, Cristo Foufas, host at Talk TV, and broadcaster Nicola Thorp. So here we are in Britain, 7th largest economy in the world, and we're caught in the midst of this global cost of living crisis as energy prices go through the roof. The energy price cap is raising 80% this October, and people online are already sharing expected tariff costs well over £600 a month, while 7 in 10 pubs are expected to have to close, with electricity bills reaching more than 50 grand a year. So Nadeem Zahawi, he says it's a real worry that people are going to freeze this winter. Yep. While Boris Johnson recommends buying a £20 kettle to save £10 a year on your energy bill. Wages are stagnating in the meantime, with most people taking a real terms pay cut, and criminal barristers have joined rail workers in taking strike action. As calls for a general strike grow louder and a dark winter of discontent draws ever nearer, what, if anything, can be done? What are real, tangible solutions that could fix this and make things better for the worst affected? And will the government do them? Will they do anything? Tonight, we're going to be aiming to get to the bottom of it. We may not be the government, but they don't seem to have any real solutions currently. So should we see what we can come up with instead? I'm literally proposing that this is a cabinet meeting, and we're gonna give it 40 minutes to an hour.
Whiteboard?
Yeah. And what on earth is the political party that we're all supposed to be members of?
I'm not sure. We're just going to
have any alcohol.
Yeah, there should be a lot of gin. Fair. Yeah. Okay, Grace, solve it. Come on, cost of living crisis. We want solutions.
Come to me first. Okay, look. So whenever you have an inflationary crisis, the question that society has to ask itself, effectively, or the government has to ask itself, is who's going to be made to pay for rising prices. Now, if you just leave things, it's going to end up being those with the least power in the economy who end up paying. Those with the most power who basically are able to insulate themselves from most of these cost increases and those pressures. And we're seeing that play out at the moment. So corporate profits are obviously holding up just fine. In fact, they're often in some sectors higher than they were before this crisis. Mm-hmm. And that's often because corporations in kind of concentrated sectors, so where there's not a lot of competition, use periods of inflation to actually jack up their prices higher than the increase in their costs. So you're basically seeing kind of rampant profiteering in sectors of the economy where you've got high levels of market concentration. Workers, meanwhile, are seeing their wages effectively being cut drastically by inflation. They're having a real terms pay cut. That comes on the back of, after the financial crisis, 10 years of wage stagnation. So, we're really seeing upwards redistribution right now from working people to shareholders and some of the wealthiest people in our society. Intervening to stop that requires a whole combination of things. So firstly, obviously, support workers to make sure that their wages are maintained, that they increase in line with inflation. Secondly, you need strategic price controls in sectors of the economy where there is this profiteering. So that's obviously energy is the main one. We had that with the energy price cap, really. So this is just the reintroduction of the energy price cap. And then containing inflationary pressure means actually targeting corporate profits and targeting those people that are really, milking this situation to benefit themselves.
So you're going windfall tax?
Yeah, windfall taxes, wealth taxes, all those different sorts of things. Because again, the question that we have to be asking ourselves is who is going to be paying for this crisis? Is it going to be kids, that dinner lady that we saw in that clip that I'm sure we'll be talking about today, parents, people who are working extremely hard? Or is it going to be people who just own all the stuff and generate huge amounts of wealth and income on the basis of that?
And if you're
managing the tax system effectively, then it shouldn't be an increase, relatively speaking, in the proportion of GDP that you're paying out in public sector salaries, because relatively speaking, you're just maintaining people's salaries. So as long as you're making sure that as prices go up, that is reflected across the economy. So as prices go up, the amount you're taking in tax goes up, and that then is able to fund your payment of these salaries. Then it shouldn't actually make that much of a difference. The issue is, of course, that a lot of the time tax revenues aren't going up along with the prices in the rest of the economy, partly because we're on the brink of a massive recession. So there are going to be lots of people and businesses who just are going to have to stop paying taxes. And also because, there is a huge problem in this country of very wealthy people and wealthy corporations just not paying their taxes altogether. Mm-hmm. So not only are many of these kind of profiteering corporations using this crisis to increase the amount that they're able to get out of the system, they're not paying tax on it half the time. So that's, again, something that we really should be using this moment to clamp down on.
If you're saying, look, we have to close the loopholes and stop... I never have a problem with companies doing that, i.e. using the loopholes, because it's not the company's fault, it's the government's fault for having the loopholes. So of course a company's going to use loopholes. If you're saying now's the time to close those loopholes, totally on board. If you're saying now's the time to bring in a load more regressive taxes, I would say not. And also we should be giving much more business relief to those very pubs that you were just talking about as well, those hospitality businesses that were decimated with COVID and decimated. Get them a rate cut, get them a corporation tax cut, get VAT off some of those taxable items so that we get in there. And we actually visit.
I love that you just threw it to me then. Thank you, Cristo.
So I interrupted you, that's why.
I was really, really enjoying the conversation. I think over the past couple of months, I think a lot of the politicians that they wheel out, a lot of the stuff that they are saying is designed to confuse we, the little people. I'm nowhere near as well versed in tax or economics as the two of you, and I sit here listening and going, why aren't these conversations happening between MPs? Why is it people like us sat at a table rather than them fully explaining the realities of inflation? Because all we get told is we can't, that the sound bites that we fight against here at Byline, right, is can't increase wages because that'll push up inflation. And so many people will sit there and go, oh, OK. And it's never fully... I think education is so important.
The point that people really need to kind of get their heads around when it comes to inflation is that there's a real difference between what's going on with nominal prices, so just like the numbers that you see in front of you when you go and pay for something, and then, real prices. So effectively the relative balance of incomes in the economy, right? So, whether that's wages versus profits or tax revenue or whatever. And even if you're seeing nominal prices go up a lot, so the numbers going up and up and up on the, on the price stickers, then, there's no reason that should necessarily mean a shift in the balance between incomes in the rest of the economy. So if prices are going up across the economy in unison, so like wages are going up, profits are going up, and it's all happening at the same time, then you just end up with the same structure of the economy at a higher price level, right? So just add a couple of zeros on basically to everything and how it was before. The issue is that that's not what's happening, because workers are seeing their wages eroded because they're not seeing their wages go up with prices, but corporations are putting prices up and their profits are going up with prices. So actually what we're seeing is a kind of stealth redistribution that's coming under the guise of this change in nominal prices. And that's the problem.
But I think the issue would potentially be, though, if you were to say, right, let's give everyone a pay rise, I think that a lot of the corporations that you're talking about would say, well, we're not going to dent the profits, we'll put prices up even further to try and...
which is why you also need strategic price controls in certain sectors, because the only sectors that you can really do that in are the ones that are already not competitive enough. So where there's corporate power or monopoly or oligopoly power. And actually those need to be regulated anyway.
And when you look at this situation, Sam, what's sort of the first thing that comes to your mind? Is it about wages? Is it about price caps? Where are you at?
I think debt is quite an interesting topic and one that's occupied Conservatives quite heavily during this leadership contest. And I find it deeply ironic that the two leadership contenders are deeply concerned about debt, despite the fact that they're willing to write off a load of the money that we gave to businesses in COVID relief because they're about to go bust. There's another point that people don't fully appreciate in that the majority of COVID debt that we produced was bought by the Bank of England. So the government owes itself money so we can control that debt really effectively, more so than ever before. And obviously we see this playing out in the public sector as well. And I was trying to research this morning how much schools would have to pay in their energy bills this year. And Labour's put up some suggestion that it's going to be £1 billion that schools are going to have to fork out for their energy bills. But the interesting thing is, talking about the balance of the economy, the tax breaks that are actively awarded by the government to private schools each year is equivalent to £3 billion. So if we're talking about loopholes, we could directly close that loophole and help to fund the energy costs of state schools immediately.
Not to mention the tax cuts and subsidies that we give to fossil fuel companies.
Yeah. I think what's really interesting is that this crisis that we're facing, suddenly, to an extent, people, think they're very tribal, that I'm a Conservative or I am Labour. And actually, suddenly, that goes out the window to an extent, because you're just like, oh, my God, I can't afford my gas bill. My pub's got a 60-grand gas bill, so I just don't want to pay that. And at that point, wanging on about I believe in growth and low taxes, or I believe in this. It's just like, no, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? Yeah. And to a certain extent, I don't care what you do. I just can't go under. And I feel that to some degree that is sort of bringing people together in a way that we haven't been for a long time. So we've been in such a divided society, and suddenly there's just right and wrong, and we can't have kids going to school not being able to eat lunch, and we can't let all these businesses go under. And then actually the amount of sympathy for the strikes,
so much more,
is people are like, no, actually, yeah, that doesn't make sense that a junior barrister starts on 10 grand.
Not from me.
Not from you.
No, I feel that we are all much more in it together than we were. I feel actually that we all are trying to get to the same place. The debate and the political side of it is the means by which we get there. I worry a lot about strikes. I think that certain industries that are absolutely essential, like transport, for instance, you will end up penalising the very low-paid workers who need to get to their work in order for the means to be able to get transport workers a pay rise. And I feel that that's hypocritical, and I feel that it doesn't help the economy.
But those rail workers are standing in solidarity with low-paid workers throughout the transport system.
Tell that to someone who can't pay their bills because they can't get to work.
Well, exactly. These are the people who can't pay their bills and can't get to work. The
transport
unions are saying we want a pay rise, not just for us, for cleaners, for everyone who is in any way touching on this network. And when you start to see that level of solidarity, because we're going to see coordinated strikes across transport, nursing, education, law.
And I think that's disastrous.
Exactly. It's not, because it's workers standing together in solidarity saying, you know what, nobody's going to give us anything if we don't fight for it and work for it together.
Why do you think the strikes are disastrous rather than the current system and the way
I look, don't get me wrong. Do I think enough is being done? Absolutely not. Do I think it's appalling that we have this power vacuum at the moment while we wait for the birth of our new Prime Minister? Absolutely ridiculous. And let's not forget as well, picking up on your point, Sam, the government is making money through this. They're making money through the VAT on the prices that are going up, and they're also making money because the higher the inflation is, the smaller their debt becomes. So that is wrong. However, if you were to say that, where I disagree is that, firstly, I don't feel that bringing Britain to a halt during a situation like this is particularly helpful or is going to get us in a particularly better direction, number one. Number two, I think it's unrealistic, for the reasons that I explained to Grace before, to expect every single person in the public sector to have an inflationary
if that's the
pay
case,
rise.
then you think that the current level of salary in the public sector is untenable, because all it would be doing was be maintaining the level of salary in the public sector.
Well, I don't think that you
because
can
people
have...
are already underpaid in the public sector. We've already had a long-term...
I don't think any industry at the moment... What I would be focusing on the targeted help that I spoke about before, which is bringing down... People are only angry because their energy bills are so high. People are only angry because they're paying money.
They've been angry about
a lot of things. But if you brought those things down and allow people to keep more of their own pocket, money in their own pocket, if you...
But you're saying that you want to give people money and benefits rather than allowing them to organise in order to maintain their wages, which is their money.
I want to give them more of their own money, and I want to give targeted help to those people who really need it, who are in...
Their money is the money that they are organising to demand from their bosses.
They're not striking for tax cuts, they're striking for pay rises.
No, they're striking to maintain their wages, but
in line with inflation.
But they're not going to be able to do that. I think that's unrealistic to be able to pay that.
Why do you think it's unrealistic?
Because it's not going to... Firstly, it's not going to come out of the profit. Secondly, people suffer.
But
why won't it come out of profit?
Yeah.
Because it just won't. Is there any legislation
Why?
that would
It's the
say?
classic, the
So
world
you-
is the way it is right now, so I can't possibly
So
imagine it
what
ever
do you
being
think?
any other way.
You think that the companies are going to suddenly say, right, okay, we're going to take
That's
so
the
much
point.
less
Yeah,
money?
that's the point.
Strikes.
No,
That's
they're
the
not going
point
to do it. It's not
of
going to work.
strikes.
It's not going to work.
Historically, how do you think we got the weekend? How do you think we got minimum wage act?
Maternity
How do you think we got
the
limit?
same.
It's
Those are things
workers
from previously.
striking. No, it's not. It's workers coming together, striking, and saying to their bosses, "We demand wage increases, and if you don't give us wage increases, we're shutting down your company,"
Yeah.
which means you're not going to make any profits either. It's workers saying to the government, "We are coming together to shut down the country so that we can make sure that actually everyone in that country has a decent
I
standard
know
of
what
living."
you're saying,
And
but I
if you
think
don't
you're
do that,
living in a
No,
fantasy
I
world.
think
If you
we're
think
living-
that, sorry, can I just say, I think you're living in a fantasy world if you think that these companies are going to say, right, we're going to tell all our shareholders for the next few years you're going to make less money and we're not going to pass those extra costs onto the consumers. And
You
if
don't
it was,
give them a choice.
and if it was the public
That's the whole
sector,
point of strikes.
and if it was the public sector, it would be our tax money. It's our money that's going to end up being given
Do
to
you
those
realise that
workers.
that's the whole point of strikes. Is
No.
that you shut the company down so that they can't make profit if they don't pay your wages.
Yes, they
you know
can't
what,
make
Cristo?
profit, but they're not going to take those pay rises out of their future profits.
Well,
what
but
they will
That's
do
the
is they
point,
will
because
pass it
if
on to
their
us.
If their business can't work, they won't make any profit.
Yeah,
That's the whole
exactly.
point.
But they are not. But
Organising.
they are striking for a pay rise. They're not saying we want that pay rise specifically. We're not going to take the pay rise unless it comes out of profits. They'll take the pay rise
there's
wherever
no
it
other
comes
option.
No
from.
other option. The
Yeah.
company will be
Yes,
forced
yes,
to take
oh
it out of
yes.
profit.
Company
And then
income.
how will the company then maintain its profits?
And also,
But it won't. That's the whole point.
Yes, because they'll put prices up. So therefore, we
I'm
as
sorry.
consumers will end up paying more for the very things.
No,
yes.
I feel like this is very obvious. A company's income
Yes.
can be divided into, obviously, the amount that they're putting back into investment. Let's just say profits and wages.
Yes. Yeah.
If you increase wages,
Yes.
then you have less profit.
Yes,
That's
so
what workers
then
are
you
arguing
look for a way to increase your
No,
profit,
people
which means
don't-
that
People don't always think like that.
to.
Of
People don't have
course
to think
they
like
do.
that.
Of course,
And
corporations
this
think
is
like
why
that.
things need to change because
if they put up prices. How
I
would
mean,
you
like,
explain
that's-
that?
And how do you think that we've ended up in the situation that we're in now, where
What
all
you're
of
basically
these
saying is that we don't live in a free market economy and therefore there's no justification for capitalism. Because if what you're saying is true, that as soon as workers demand wage increases that therefore reduce profits, corporations will automatically put up prices and they won't be penalised by the market for that, it implies we don't live in a free market system and companies can basically do whatever they want.
Well, look
which
at
is, theoretically speaking, not true of capitalist
Well,
societies.
think of the
and
railway
also
companies at the
only
moment,
true in
That's
very
not-
concentrated industries
that's
where
not
they should be
profitable.
regulated
Sam,
anyway.
jump in.
No, you finish on the railway companies because I think it's an interesting model.
No,
if you're
well,
going to use
okay.
it.
No,
Yeah.
no, it is because the railways themselves are nationalised, but the actual train operating companies they're subsidised, but they set their fares, right? Right. Well, do you think that fares are not going to go up massively if we give a massive pay rise to people who work on the
The
railway?
railways are a
There
natural
will come a
monopoly.
point people can't afford them because their wages are so low. You're kind of saying that we should all accept the way society is and have no progression, no radical thought at all, and that all these workers who are making the profit, they create the profit, have to be like serfs and just go, oh, you barons keep taking all the money and I'll just go to work and I can't afford anything and I'll go back to my freezing cold house and look at a book by candlelight because I can't
At least
plug
it's not as bad
my
as it was back
telly
in
in,
the-
and my
yeah.
kids are going to go to school and I can't afford their shoes. I mean,
Because
it's
that's
like
exactly
going
what I
back
think,
to
because there's no
Victorian
middle
times.
ground at all.
You
That's
know what,
exactly what I think.
You said, Cristo, I tell you what, we're at a point right now where, and I'm not joking, hospitals are preparing warm rooms for their staff.
Yes.
For their workers, because they know there is panic out there, there is anger, there is fear, and it's justified. And you know what? We have a huge labour shortage. We're hemorrhaging NHS workers who are burnt out, and they aren't paid enough. And that added on another 10,000 or whatever. And you look at it and it's like, do you want to have good infrastructure? Do you want to have a good quality of life where everybody benefits from great teaching and great things? Because we're at that point. We're not going to have teachers and everything unless they start getting paid properly.
Well, again,
Then we all
I
benefit.
am not against a pay rise. I'm against an inflation level pay rise, number one.
Which
And
means
number
you're for a
two-
pay cut.
Yeah, which
You're
means
for a pay
you're
cut.
Yes, because unfortunately, here is some
But
news
you're not
for
against
everyone.
tapping some of their
The
profit.
shareholders shouldn't be asked to take a pay cut,
Again.
but the teachers should.
Again, what are the means by which you think that we are going to not end up seeing their profits bouncing back back in years to come, months to come.
When workers organise.
Strikes.
Exactly.
It's workers' right.
But you have to switch your thinking into not what we gain in profit, but what we lose in our entire business if we have no staff working for us.
Yes, and workers... Right, okay, I'll say it again, right. Workers go on strike and the company loses profits, right? And the company has to either settle with the workers by some means or the workers have to give up, right? That's where...
I don't know about losing profits because they don't get paid when they go on strike.
Yes, but I know, but if the company isn't operating, the company isn't actually taking any money either. And so, therefore, you end up with a situation where the company is not making any money. Right. Now, the company says, right, we're giving in. We'll give you all a massive pay rise.
It's not massive.
We'll give you all an inflationary pay rise, which proportionately
to afford to live.
is quite a big pay rise. It is an inflation in line with inflation pay rise, which, by the way, many people in the private sector won't be going near and won't be getting.
Oh, I don't know. It's about 31% up in the city.
There was
in the city.
Yeah.
That's not, that's a micro in the private sector.
High pay has gone up disproportionately. So the ratio between average pay and executive pay is actually increased.
But where are the stats? 'Cause I genuinely don't know them.
The High Pay Centre, there's a report. I mean,
Yes,
I'm sure
I know,
you can link it in the...
Institute for Fiscal Studies.
The average pay in the private sector, how does that compare to average pay in the public sector?
Well, the public sector had forced on it a pay freeze that has gone on for a very long time.
The Institute for Fiscal Studies calculated that the average monthly pay in finance was 31% higher in February than at the end of 2019.
But that's in finance.
Yeah, okay.
But
just to give you an example...
That's a really, really bad example of a private sector.
It's true across financial professional services.
All I am saying is that companies, unless you are going to legislate for them to have to take pay rises out of their profits forevermore, those companies are going to pass on those extra costs to their consumers in order to keep their profits going up every year.
Again, so FYI, you can't just say that is inevitably what's going to happen if we live in a competitive economy. Your example of the railways was a good example because that's not a competitive market. It's not really a market at all, which is why it should actually be in public ownership. It's
I'm not completely in disagreement with you.
This is what I was going to say when you were talking earlier about the levels of agreement that we have. The amount of times recently that I've sat next to Conservative MPs or, thinkers who I've had very aggressive debates about public ownership before in the past and who are now being no, actually, in these natural monopolies, because you're right, if, workers do organise, they're not going to take a cut to their profits. They're just going to say, well, I have this franchise to operate this railway system and I'm actually going to force consumers to pay more because what are they going to do? Get another train line? There is no other train line.
Yeah, look at the water companies, the lack of investments. We've all got pooey rivers now.
I agree. I never thought these words would come out of my mouth, but I'm even swaying now on the way in which the energy market is broken and the nationalisation that Thatcher... Are
you going to blame Thatcher?
The privatisation that Thatcher brought in. I'm not going to blame her.
I think it was her fault.
I don't believe that what she envisaged in the privatisation that we had of those big nationalised industries in the 80s, I don't believe that we've got now what she envisaged. And I think that what I find frustrating about this debate is that everyone says, oh my God, we should be producing our own energy. Oh my God, why aren't we using tidal? Oh my God, why aren't we using North Sea gas? Oh my God, why aren't we fracking? Well, if we did any of those things, they'd still end up in the competitive energy market and none of it would end up
I think what you've hit on there, Cristo, is that
we don't own it.
We live in this world where I don't think anything, sadly, particularly imaginative, progressive, radical, is going to happen in the way that it needs to. Because from where I'm standing, what needs to happen is we need to be independent of energy so that we're not reliant on tyrants like Putin, where that energy needs to be clean and renewable. And we need to whack up loads of wind turbines very, very quickly because you can get the energy extraordinarily quickly. Power our houses, it's clean, it's green, all the rest of it, while we're building nuclear. None of that's going to happen. None of that's going to happen. Pie in the sky, idealistic twaddle, because you've got 30 lords sitting in the House of Lords who've got their links to the energy companies. You've got all of them taking backhanders. All the Tory donors, many of the Tory donors are, this is factually correct, sort of from energy firms. So what happens?
You need to organise. This is why organising is so important. Because when there isn't change that's coming organically from within our political system, people have to demand it themselves.
Well, no one really wanted it before. as well. No, when Corbyn was standing on a ticket to renationalise, he didn't.
It was a Brexit.
Pretty well in 2017.
He did, but it was a Brexit election.
Of the vote.
But he didn't win.
Quite a lot of people.
Quite a lot of people. He didn't win.
How many people did you hear talking about nationalisation then, apart from obviously people in the Labour Party? It was a Brexit election.
That's true.
Mm-hmm. That was that election, and
It's
here
also-
we are now.
It's going to be really interesting to see how Truss plays politically, because Johnson was relatively more interventionist, particularly in his rhetoric. You know, levelling up, it was about how many thousand teachers, nurses, police officers. It was about, you know, giving them a pay rise finally. And Liz Truss is more reflecting your viewpoint of, you know, let's cut taxes, and as a result, you're going to have to go through another phase of austerity because we won't be able to.
Because it means public.
We won't be able to pay for it. So it will be really interesting to see if she resonates with the Red Wall and with crucial Conservative voters in the same way that Johnson did. I expect that she won't, or she'll have to play the culture war, which will be, you know, our politics in the gutter for the next
Also,
5
what
years.
did Johnson achieve for those areas in his time?
Very little, but, you know, he talked about it, and, you know, the Leave, he was sort of the embodiment of the Leave campaign, which said 350 million to the NHS a week, and so he carried that through, he carried that persona through, and as we know, Johnson was the ultimate sort of charlatan.
Of course, he was a complete Remainer. I mean, what did Johnson achieve on levelling up? Absolutely nothing. What did Johnson achieve full stop? Absolutely nothing.
Wait
other
a
than
minute,
being okay on Ukraine.
I think we should look. He's got some great ideas. Shall we just look at his idea very quickly?
Yes.
Let's have a look what Johnson says we should do.
So you have to look ahead and you have to beware of the false economy. If you have an old kettle that takes ages to boil, it may cost you £20 to replace it. But if you get a new one, you'll save £10 a year for every year on your £10 a year every year on your electricity bill.
There you go. There you go.
Right.
So we've discussed all sorts.
You can't even deliver bad advice well.
He can't even say...
£10. I mean, you break even in 2 years on your kettle, ladies and gentlemen, so that's a very good thing.
Never bought a kettle in his life.
We have the highest tax burden that we've had since the war, firstly, at the moment.
Well, we don't. It's actually generally kind of middle-earning people that have the highest tax burden since the war. People at the very top end of society can get away with paying actually relatively little in tax.
We'll close the loopholes. On board with that. Would we own... Just going back to your...
Hang on, I'm writing down. We've got closed loopholes.
Yeah, get some ideas.
That's consensus.
Line that one.
Yes, we
People have been trying to close tax loopholes.
Can we all agree we should, without a doubt, this is a tax cut, don't bite my head off, 4 against 1, just saying, can we please just a half of a litre of the pound that you put in your petrol tank goes to the government. The government is making a fortune out of petrol being so expensive. Can we please just absolutely radically cut fuel duty so that people can get to work and do the things they need to do in their cars? Am I allowed to say that? Are we in consensus on that?
Well, the reason that the taxes on fuel are so high, the same reason that taxes on alcohol and other bads are high. Now, I'm not saying that I think that actually at this point in time those should be as high as they are, but the idea behind that is that you get revenue from that and then you incentivise people to take up other forms of transport. Now, obviously, the issue is that you disincentivise consumption of the thing, and then you invest that in potentially providing alternative. That's the thing that we haven't been doing. We haven't been investing in.
It's a massively incentive to switch to electric cars.
So I am in favour of then saying, right, you. This is just an ideological thing, but you make electric cars, you subsidise those to make them the incentive. You put so much electrical infrastructure around it becomes a no-brainer that you use an electric car. We are not there yet, but what we are doing is we are trying to penalise those people who use petrol without having the incentive or the infrastructure for electric yet. People need to get to work.
We do incentivise electric cars.
But you've also got people like carers who are having to pay their own petrol costs. It might be in a rural area. It's just fantasy.
Government should not be making money out of the amount that people are having to pay for petrol to get to work. Nurses, teachers, all those people.
I thought what you were going to say is that we all can agree that the national insurance hike should be reversed, which I do agree with, even though that is a tax cut.
Put up income tax.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
National insurance? The hike?
As long as
get it down.
Yeah.
This is such a
So we replace.
I love consensus cabinet.
Yeah,
I have one that's maybe going to elicit
Rail renationalisation. Sorry, was also
rail nationalise. Are we doing water as well? Because I'm a bit upset.
Oh, come on, we can sneak that
What
one
about
in.
more immediately? What about short term? What about tomorrow? What do we implement tomorrow? And my thing, I've been thinking about all week is just immediately freeze the energy increases on households that consume the least energy, if that makes sense, because they tend to be the poorer households. And their price rises are going up 80%, just like everybody else. If it's a way of means testing that doesn't cost a lot of money, energy companies already know who's using the least. And those are the people who can't afford an extra fiver, an extra £100.
By your logic, though, that's an incentive for them not to use much energy. If your fuel logic is to go by...
It's not...
Let's make it more expensive, and then therefore incentivises them not to use it.
No.
You
There's
can't
no
be like,
alternative, and not if you go retrospectively. You're being Cristo.
I'm being me, sorry.
What about
expensive.
wealth taxes? This is one where we're going to have a little bit more.
Oh, look at it. Oh, what
No
about a
second
wealth tax?
I think this is what
No
we need
second
right
homes.
now.
Yeah.
No second homes.
What's your threshold? What defines...
His portfolio went up in flames.
How about third or fourth?
This is a really interesting conversation to have, because even in terms of, I think the British public need to have a consensus about what means wealth, because I was on your show once talking about doctors and nurses, and I got a bit of stick for saying that doctors and nurses should be getting a pay rise, and they're like, they earn loads. If they're on 34 grand, that's huge. And to my mind, maybe it's because I've grown up in London. So I know if you're trying to raise a family and pay rent in London...
It's naff all.
The housing market
that
is
nothing.
broken.
Yeah.
This is something that you haven't even touched on yet.
Yeah.
It's how much of this, like the deterioration of people's living standards, is down to, firstly, rising rents, and secondly, to a lesser extent, the cost of debt servicing for people who have mortgages. So, yeah, that's a whole other thing that we
No
don't...
second homes, no profit.
I'm not going to agree to that.
No rent higher than the mortgage costs.
But can we partner just for 1 second? Can we all agree for just 1 sec that because it's the kind of external inflation, cost push, I think it's called, inflation, that we're experiencing at the moment, which is factors almost out of our control that have brought a big amount of this.
We shouldn't have interest increases.
What the Bank of England were thinking putting up interest rates is
Agreed.
balmy. Can we put interest rates back down, please?
Yeah.
I know that's not a cabinet decision, but can we put that on?
I'm up for that. I don't... maybe you can explain this. I have a very good handle on these things. Why putting interest rates up prevents inflation? I don't...
Yeah.
What is the
Cristo
crux?
was just saying is that there's two forms of inflation, one of which is cost push. That's if the cost of a very important input to production just goes up because it becomes more scarce. So that's what we're seeing at the moment. The other one is demand pull. So if the economy is doing really, really well, loads of people are buying loads of things, businesses are all investing, and that means everyone's competing for the same amount of resources. They're bidding up the prices of those resources, and you basically just see the economy kind of overheating.
Yeah.
You had this, obviously, like housing markets,
Yeah.
etc. And then when you raise interest rates, it disincentivizes borrowing, which means people can do that less because they can't go out and borrow to buy new stuff. So that kind of is supposed to take the heat out of it. That's obviously not what we're seeing at the moment.
No.
But putting interest rates up doesn't generally solve cost-push inflation. So it screams of the Bank of England doing something...
Just doing something.
Rather than what is actually required. And I think that there's a real risk that will put us into recession, because it will mean that people have even less money to spend on the things like their energy bills. So... Can we be agreed on that with housing, that we are, as our dictatorship now?
Yeah, we can.
And then let's go back to your broken housing market.
No second homes, Cristo.
Well, what do you-
Third or fourth.
What do you mean by a second home? Do you mean no buy-to-let landlords?
No buy-to-let landlords.
No buy-to-let landlords. And
No, I didn't mean that as an idea.
No profit on rent.
Yeah.
No profit on
100%.
rent. Yeah.
That's the ultimate monopoly land. Like, they're not contributing
100%
anything.
I think if we get
100%
four,
agree.
it's in.
How many
You
rents?
scrounger. You scrounger.
No, I have.
People's
What I have
wages.
done wonderfully is I've picked up the slack of where the governments have failed on housing, and private landlords like myself should be applauded for the good quality housing that we are providing for people.
How much profit do you make?
I make a
You've
profit
just got
every
houses
month.
that the state used to own and let out at social market rents that are now in the hands of private landlords being let out
Why
at
do you think
extraordinary high rents.
Why do you think my portfolio consists of ex-local authority
Because a
apartments?
lot of them are. Exactly.
This is like one tiny little anecdote, but a great friend of mine, her rent's just gone up by £500 a month.
God.
And her landlord doesn't have a mortgage on that flat.
Okay.
And she's now either going to have to get like a lodger in or move. And this I'm hearing from quite a few people I know actually at the moment. So I agree. I think it's absolutely got to be tackled ASAP. We've got a good list, guys.
Okay. Can I say something to that? Firstly, just on a personal level, I've put absolutely no rent up.
Yeah,
with the
I'm
cost of
sure,
living
not all
crisis
landlords
at all,
are the same.
because I love my tenants. My tenants are I want them to consider it a home, and all my properties are very, very lovely, if I say so myself. You can visit
How
any of
many
them.
are there?
So why would you object to legislating that?
Because it is a means of income. It means I will take means I will take a burden off the state when I'm older by it being my pension. But I am not averse. If you are telling me...
If there was a cap now and the government said landlords just aren't allowed to increase their rents, you'd be in support of that because you've done it yourself?
I would have concerns about that because I have made a decision to do that. I would be in favour of perhaps if there was a way, and maybe I'm being naive saying this, of incentivising landlords not to do that. Because the problem that you have with what you're saying is that I think a lot of landlords would then say, right, well, we'll have a high rent to start with. And anyone moving into a new property now pays higher than I would have probably charged to cover myself because I can't put it up in the future.
But if you freeze rents anyway, so even if you do get a new tenant and you can't increase the rents, it's like
also,
that's how
Cristo,
rent controls work.
if you want your tenants to really feel like they're at home, why don't you give it to them?
No, because then I'll tell you why I wouldn't. Firstly, I have put down money that I have earned on those properties. Yeah. Secondly, I have paid a massive amount of stamp duty on those properties by the fact that I pay an extra amount. So the government have made money. I have done up every single one of those properties and put money in the economy.
But you
money
paid
I've
them
already...
off.
No. I have mortgages on all of them.
But do you charge more than your mortgage payments?
Yes. I make but I don't charge loads more. I'm not like...
I don't think again...
No, it's fine. You can attack me. I don't mind.
People investing their money and letting flats out and all the rest of it, it's the problem is that there's no affordable housing and that now...
It's institutionalised. During the stamp duty holiday, 60% of people paying stamp duty during that period or not paying it were second home buyers.
Yeah.
People making the most of that opportunity were second home buyers. So the government basically provided a free holiday for landlords to purchase more homes to then subject people to this crisis.
Yes, they did.
The biggest tax loophole in this country is the no capital gains on your primary residence.
That is outrageous. You cannot bring that in.
It's true, because there have been people... You couldn't bring it in because it would be politically a complete and utter disaster.
Why would you want, if it's your primary residence?
Because there are people who have basically just ridden the wave of the massive increase in house prices over the course of the last 40 years. They bought a house for 20 grand in Peckham. It's now worth, over $1 million. That's like money that has just gone into the pockets of those people out of everyone else's pockets.
I bought a flat young because I could, and I'm just because I'm 48, like I made money on it. It wasn't anything clever. So I actually hear you, because now I've got a 17-year-old and a 15-year-old, and I'm lucky because I've got a home, but looking at them, I'm thinking, you're going to live with me forever.
Yeah.
You're going to live with me forever.
Outrageous. The idea of capital gains tax on your primary residence.
It's very normal.
No.
And the way you could do this would be two ways. You could either do that, you probably couldn't because it would be politically untenable. The other way is just to say you capture those unearned capital gains through inheritance tax, because there's going to be loads of people who...
It's only 40% now.
Well, I mean, there's massive, as you know, over 600 grand before you even start paying inheritance tax.
The bit that hurts my head is that somebody could be on, say, 25, 30 grand, and they're paying thousands of pounds in rent, when someone who had an interest-free mortgage on a rather huge amount of debt would be paying perhaps a few hundred quid. That hurts my head. There has to be a way to solve that, to give people the choice. They might want to accrue the debt and have...
massive problems.
Two quick solutions there, then, Firstly, on the subject of you wanting me to give my property to my tenants...
Not given, but just like for free.
But if a time ever came for me to sell that property and the government said, you know what, we will... This is a second home, not my primary residence... we will relieve you of the capital gains we would have charged you if you sell it to those tenants minus that capital gains fee. I'm not averse to that. So the tenants.
So you want to just make that capital gain back in exchange for selling it to someone who...
Yeah, so say I'm selling a property that I've made £100,000 on, and I would have paid a chunk of that £100,000 on. So you're
saying you take the
capital gains off and pass it on take it off the price to give it to the tenant, so that they get a sort of right to buy for private tenants. Not averse to that.
That was a Labour policy, by the way.
It was ish, but I don't think it was about the capital gain.
It wasn't.
No, because the landlords would have ended up being penalised. Secondly, all of these things, capital gains on your primary residence, not being able to get onto the property ladder, communism, and the problems that you were describing, some sort of strange thing. Build more houses. That's the policy.
It's not just build more houses.
I would agree that they need to build more houses.
They do need more houses.
Cheap, affordable, decent homes.
It's not just a supply issue, because if you look, there's actually been a number of studies now that have shown that if you look at it, measure it on certain levels, we have built enough homes.
We have enough.
For the increase in population that we've seen since the 1980s. The issue is that you can see it when you go through Nine Elms, Vauxhall, all these parts of the country.
He said
there's nobody in there.
Yeah, well, that's why you build cheap, affordable, decent, social housing. That I'm not averse to.
Wow, communism.
What a bit of social housing.
Agree, but wow.
Social housing.
Social
That I'm not
Social
averse to.
housing.
We've already got loads of empty flats that are being used as investments by often people from halfway around the world. Why is that allowed?
I agree with that.
Because they're paying a fortune in stamp duty.
But they're not. They're not paying that much tax at all, relatively speaking.
They pay more stamp duty as well. If
the social cost of
be able to
those
make money
homes being empty is greater than the amount that they're paying into the system.
There are whole streets in wealthy parts of London, like Kensington, where you might have, say, 50 houses and 35 of them are completely empty. It's Russian, Chinese money sat there empty.
Half of it, by the way, laundered, and God knows where it's come from.
Yeah.
I don't like the idea of government stepping in and sort of take... I know you'd love that, but I don't like the idea of government...
Will not prevent money laundering.
Money laundering, yes, but you are, Jemma Forte, you are so jumping to the extreme. When I said a mild pay rise, I want to see nurses starving. Now I'd like not to see the government stepping in and taking ownership of private houses. I am in favour of money laundering.
OK, point taken. Do you know what, though? We've done well, Cabinet.
I think that's a remarkable amount of consensus.
And how long
Although you are, of course, massively manoeuvred.
We've agreed. We've found
Outmanoeuvred or outvoted?
Outvoted, yeah, probably the word I was looking for.
I don't want to just say, I do want to do some government bashing. We've had a summer with this coming down the track. I had a week off. I don't know, how long did you have off? Because
I can't afford a holiday.
Johnson caretaker. He went to Slovakia.
I lost so much money on the strikes trying to get to the airport that the RMT trolled me online.
Do you have a holiday home you could go to?
No, I don't have
more. I don't have any houses. Someone asked me the other day, they were speculating about my net worth on Twitter, because there's all these websites that make up.
They always say you're worth $1 million. I'm like,
I was like, I'm worth nothing. The value of my assets relative to my liabilities is literally zero, and I don't anticipate that changing.
You're worth everything to us, babes. You're worth everything to us.
But look, the point is, Nadeem Zahawi has said, it's all a bit worrying. I think that's what he's done. And Johnson has told us about kettles. And
said it's nothing to do with him.
We have decided, and this is what we're going to enact straight away in Parliament next week, we're going to close tax evasion loopholes.
That would be just hugely radical in itself.
Amazing. We're going to reverse the national insurance hike. We're going to nationalise rail. We're going to nationalise water.
OK, that's where we're stopping for now.
OK. And we're going to bring interest rates are coming back down.
Yes.
We're going to have no buy-to-let landlords.
No. We're building affordable housing, aren't we? Instead of that,
I agree with a bit of cheap affordable housing as well.
Housing, there's a surprise. It's the biggest stickler.
You do not have a consensus cabinet on the.
All right. OK, so
just saying.
We've got four rather big, huge bits of policy there. So I would say just massive congratulations to all of us. Who is going to be what? I'm definitely not Chancellor.
I'll be Chancellor.
I'm just I don't want to be.
I'll be levelling up. Representing the North.
What do you want? Do you want Home Secretary, Foreign Secretary?
Housing? I want housing.
You can have housing. Can I be I don't know, special envoy to the Bahamas?
Yeah.
That sounds really good.
I want to work in politics. That sounds awful. It sounds absolutely dreadful.
Who's Home Secretary? Can I be Homo Secretary? It's a cheap joke, I'm sorry. Better than that.
I want to be Minister for Hyperbole.
Oh, OK.
Minister for just huge exaggeration.
You'll do very well. You'll be Prime Minister soon.
Yeah, because...
It's the only way to know
I actually think that's all we've got time for tonight. But what a productive discussion it's been. I'm very proud of us. But what did you think? Did anybody change your mind? Do let us know in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe as well. And if you'd like to see more like this from Byline TV, you can get involved. You can become a member at byline.tv/join. And if you sign up, you'll be supporting Byline TV, and you'll also get access to loads of perks too, like deciding what topics you want to see on the table and telling us what questions you want to see the panel answer. There are also hours and hours of exclusives like extended content, live Q&As, and the chance to talk directly to the producers of Byline TV. They're a nice lot. So just go to byline.tv/join to become a member today. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you again next week at the table. And thank you so much, panel. We've done great work, I think.
Yeah, I'm impressed with us.
Yeah, we're going to run the country better.
Only our politicians were as mature
and as efficient.
And present.
I forgot, I've got another job, sex scandal as well. I want that one.
That's how we're going to shove you out of the cabinet.
Then bring in all your communist policy.
Brilliant.